I never thought I would find myself in this situation. My life had always been so ordinary, so predictable. But sometimes the most unexpected things happen, and they change everything. My name is Emily, and I'm a 35-year-old woman with a seemingly perfect life. I have a loving husband, a beautiful home, and a successful career. But beneath the surface, something was missing. My husband, Tom, and I had been together for over a decade, and while our love was strong, the passion had faded. We were more like roommates than lovers, and I found myself yearning for something more. It all started one evening, when Tom came home from work later than usual. He seemed distant, preoccupied with something he wouldn't share. I tried to engage him in conversation, but he brushed me off, saying he was just tired. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but I pushed it aside, telling myself I was overreacting. Days turned into weeks, and Tom's behavior grew more erratic. He would come home late, often smelling of alcohol, and he would spend hours locked away in his study. I tried to talk to him, to understand what was going on, but he always had an excuse: work stress, a big project, anything to avoid the truth. One night, as I lay in bed alone, I heard the front door open and close. Tom was home, but he didn't come upstairs. I waited for a while, but when he still didn't come to bed, I decided to go downstairs and check on him. As I approached his study, I heard voices, Tom's and a woman's. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. I stood outside the door, listening to their conversation. The woman was laughing, and Tom was joining in, their voices filled with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband, the man I had trusted and loved for so many years, was cheating on me. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I wanted to burst into the room and confront them, but I was frozen in place, unable to move. I listened as they talked about their plans for the future, about how they would be together, and how Tom would leave me. It was like a nightmare, but I couldn't wake up. As I stood there, trying to process what I was hearing, the door to the study suddenly opened. Tom and the woman stepped out, their arms wrapped around each other. They saw me standing there, and the look on Tom's face was one of shock and guilt. The woman, a colleague from his work, looked at me with a smug smile, as if she had won some sort of prize. "Emily, I can explain," Tom started, but I cut him off. "There's nothing to explain," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I heard everything. I know what's been going on." Tom looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and desperation. "I'm sorry, Emily. I never meant for this to happen. I fell in love with someone else." I felt a lump in my throat, tears welling up in my eyes. "How could you do this to me? To us? We had a life together, a future. And you threw it all away for this." The woman spoke up, her voice cold and dismissive. "He doesn't love you anymore, Emily. He loves me. You need to accept that and move on." I looked at her, feeling a surge of anger. "You have no right to speak to me like that. This is my husband, my life. You have no place here." Tom stepped between us, trying to calm the situation. "Emily, please. Let's talk about this. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't ignore my feelings anymore." I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I knew that this was the end, that our marriage was over. I couldn't forgive him for what he had done, for the betrayal and the pain he had caused. I looked at him, my heart breaking, and I knew what I had to do. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice firm and resolute. "I want you both to leave now." Tom looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Emily, please. Don't do this. Let's talk, let's find a way to work this out." But I was done talking, done listening to his excuses. I wanted them out of my house, out of my life. I couldn't bear to look at them anymore, to see the pain and betrayal in their eyes. "Just go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please just go." Tom and the woman exchanged a look, and then they turned and walked out the door, leaving me alone in the silence of our home. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over me. My life as I knew it was over. In the days that followed, I struggled to come to terms with what had happened. I felt lost, alone, and betrayed. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. My world had been turned upside down, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. But slowly, with the help of my friends and family, I began to heal. I started to see a therapist, to talk about my feelings, to process the pain and the betrayal. I began to rebuild my life one step at a time, one day at a time. I realized that I deserved better, that I deserved to be loved and cherished, to be treated with respect and kindness. I began to see that Tom's betrayal, while painful, had been a wake-up call, a chance for me to start over, to find happiness and love again. And so I did. I started to date again, to meet new people, to open my heart to the possibility of love. It was scary and it was hard, but it was also exhilarating and liberating. I began to see that there was life after betrayal, that there was hope and happiness waiting for me, if only I was brave enough to reach for it. One day, as I sat in a cafe, sipping my coffee and watching the world go by, I saw him. A man, sitting alone at a table by the window, his eyes fixed on a book. There was something about him, a quiet intensity that drew me in. I watched him for a moment, feeling a flutter in my stomach, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. I decided to take a chance, to be brave. I walked over to his table, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked up as I approached, his eyes meeting mine, and he smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and inviting, and it made me feel at ease. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, my voice steady and confident. He closed his book and gestured to the chair across from him. "Not at all. Please have a seat." We started talking, and it was easy, natural. He listened to me, really listened, in a way that Tom never had. He asked about my life, my dreams, my fears. And I found myself opening up to him, sharing things I hadn't shared with anyone in a long time. As the conversation flowed, I felt a connection, a spark that I hadn't felt in years. He was charming, attentive, and he made me feel seen, heard, and understood. It was intoxicating, and I found myself drawn to him in a way that was both exciting and terrifying. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few days we texted constantly. Our conversations were filled with laughter, flirtation, and a sense of anticipation. I found myself looking forward to his messages, to the moments when we could talk, when I could escape the reality of my life, and lose myself in the promise of something new. One evening, he invited me to meet him at a cozy restaurant downtown. I hesitated for a moment, knowing that this was a line I was about to cross. But the pull was too strong, the need for connection too great. I agreed to meet him. The restaurant was warm and inviting, filled with the aroma of delicious food and the sound of soft music. He was already there, sitting at a table by the window. He stood up as I approached, his eyes lighting up with a genuine smile. We sat down, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had that first day at the cafe. As we talked, I felt a growing sense of excitement and nervousness. I knew what I was doing was risky, that I was opening myself up to the possibility of heartache and pain. But at the same time, I felt alive, more alive than I had in a long time. He made me feel things I hadn't felt in years, and I couldn't ignore that. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other more frequently. We met at restaurants, at parks, anywhere we could find a quiet moment together. Our conversations deepened, and our connection grew stronger. I found myself falling for him, falling hard, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. One evening, as we sat in his car, parked in a quiet spot overlooking the city, he reached out and took my hand. His touch was gentle, yet firm, and it sent a shiver down my spine. He looked into my eyes, and I saw a mix of desire and tenderness that took my breath away. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice soft yet filled with emotion. "I know this is complicated, but I can't ignore what I'm feeling." I felt a lump in my throat, a mix of excitement and fear. I knew I should pull away, that I should end this before it went any further. But I couldn't. I was drawn to him, to the way he made me feel, to the promise of something more. "I feel the same way," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I don't know what to do, but I can't ignore this either." He leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in a soft, tender kiss. It was a moment of pure connection, a moment that felt both right and wrong. I knew I was crossing a line, that I was opening myself up to the possibility of heartache and pain. But in that moment, all I could think about was him, about the way he made me feel, about the promise of something more. As the days turned into weeks, our relationship deepened. We stole moments together whenever we could, our conversations filled with dreams and plans for the future. I found myself imagining a life with him, a life filled with love, laughter, and passion. It was a stark contrast to the emptiness I had felt with Tom, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. But as our relationship grew stronger, so did the fear. I knew I couldn't keep living this double life, that I had to make a choice. I had to decide between the safety and familiarity of my life with Tom and the passion and excitement of my life with this new man. One evening, as I sat alone in my room, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living this way, torn between two worlds, between two loves. I had to choose, and I had to do it soon. I thought about Tom, about the life we had built together, about the promises we had made. I thought about the good times, the laughter, the love. But I also thought about the distance, the silence, the feeling of being trapped. I knew that staying with him would mean living a life of quiet desperation, a life filled with regret and longing. And then I thought about this new man, about the passion, the connection, the promise of something more. I thought about the way he made me feel, about the dreams we shared, about the future we could build together. I knew that choosing him would mean taking a risk, stepping into the unknown, but it also meant the chance for happiness, for love, for a life filled with meaning. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I knew what I had to do. I had to be honest with myself and with Tom. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. I had to make a choice, and I had to do it now. The next day, I sat down with Tom. I told him everything, about the distance, the loneliness, the feeling of being trapped. I told him about this new man, about the connection, the passion, the promise of something more. I told him the truth, no matter how painful it was. Tom listened, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and anger. He didn't say much, but I could see the pain in his eyes, the betrayal, the heartache. It was a moment of pure honesty, a moment that was both liberating and devastating. In the end, we decided to go our separate ways. It was a difficult decision, filled with tears and heartache, but it was the right one. I knew that staying with Tom would mean living a life of quiet desperation, a life filled with regret and longing. And I knew that choosing this new man meant taking a risk, stepping into the unknown. But it also meant the chance for happiness, for love, for a life filled with meaning. As I walked away from Tom, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I knew that this was the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one. I was stepping into the unknown, taking a risk, but I was also choosing happiness, choosing love, choosing a life filled with meaning. And as I looked to the future, I knew that whatever lay ahead, I was ready. I was ready to face the challenges, to embrace the adventures, to live a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. I was ready to choose happiness, to choose love, to choose a life filled with meaning. What I discovered that day was more than just a moment of truth, more than just a decision. It was the key to understanding myself in a way that I never had before. It was the beginning of a new kind of relationship, one built on honesty and vulnerability. And I knew that, no matter what, this chapter of my life would never be forgotten. It was a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, we can find the connections that make us who we are. But the journey was far from over. As I began to build a new life with this new man, I realized that the challenges were just beginning. We faced obstacles, both internal and external, that tested our relationship and our resolve. One of the first challenges we faced was the judgment of those around us. Friends and family struggled to understand our decision, and many were quick to judge. They saw our relationship as a betrayal, a mistake, and their disapproval was palpable. It was a difficult time, filled with tension and conflict, but we stood firm in our decision. We knew that what we had was real, and we were determined to prove it to everyone, including ourselves. Another challenge was the lingering guilt I felt. Despite knowing that I had made the right decision, I couldn't shake the feeling of having hurt Tom. I thought about him often, wondering how he was coping, if he was okay. It was a constant battle, a tug-of-war between my past and my present, and it was something I had to confront head-on. My new partner was incredibly supportive during this time. He listened to my fears, my doubts, my regrets. He held me when I cried, reassured me when I faltered, and loved me through it all. His unwavering support was a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that I was not alone, that we were in this together. As the months passed, we began to build a life together. We moved into a small apartment, filled it with our dreams and our love. We created a space that was uniquely ours, a sanctuary where we could be ourselves, where we could grow and thrive. But even as we settled into our new life, the challenges continued. Financial struggles, career setbacks, and the everyday stresses of life tested our relationship. There were times when we argued, when we disagreed, when we questioned our decisions. But through it all, we remained steadfast in our commitment to each other, to our love, to our future. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, watching the sunset, he turned to me and said, "You know, I never thought I'd find someone like you. Someone who understands me, who challenges me, who loves me for who I am. I'm so grateful for you, for us, for everything we have." I felt a warmth spread through me as I looked at him, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. It was a moment of pure connection, a reminder of why we had chosen this path, why we had fought so hard for our love. "I feel the same way," I replied, my voice filled with emotion. "I never thought I'd find someone who makes me feel so alive, so loved, so understood. I'm grateful for you, for us, for everything we have and everything we will build together." As we sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I knew that this was just the beginning. This was the start of a new chapter, a new adventure, a new life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. But even as we looked to the future with hope and excitement, we knew that the challenges would continue. Life is never easy, never straightforward, and we were prepared to face whatever came our way. We knew that our love was strong, that our bond was unbreakable, and that together, we could overcome anything. And so we continued to build our life together, one day at a time, one step at a time. We faced the challenges, embraced the adventures, and cherished the moments of pure connection and love. We knew that this was our journey, our story, and we were determined to make it the best it could be. What I discovered that day, what I continue to discover every day, is that love is a journey. It's a journey filled with ups and downs, with challenges and triumphs, with heartache and joy. It's a journey that requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to face the unknown. But it's also a journey that is worth every step, every moment, every breath. And as I look to the future, I know that whatever lies ahead, I am ready. I am ready to face the challenges, to embrace the adventures, to live a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. I am ready to choose happiness, to choose love, to choose a life filled with meaning, because in the end, that's what matters most. It's the connections we make, the love we share, the moments we cherish. It's the journey we take, the story we create, the life we build together. And I know, no matter what, that this chapter of my life, this journey of love, will never be forgotten. It will always be a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, we can find the connections that make us who we are.